Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we've got a 209 Clk, which is one of my favourite Mercedes. It's a 220 diesel. This was probably the slowest engine they put in this model. It was a good engine, but a slow engine. It was a good workhorse. It was like the canal boat engine for Mercedes. I've got the same engine in my Vito van actually. Today's video is it worth it? This Clk that I'm currently driving has done 230,000 miles. I did a B service on it for the customer and I found a lot of work. It needed a lot of work to get it roadworthy. So the topic is it worth it? 230,000 miles. I'm going to cut to the garage, show you the work we've done, show you the procedure, everything that's gone on with the car. We'll cut back to my road test and then we can discuss prices and was it worth it. Right, so car's on the ramp. We are doing on this high mileage Clk brake fluid change, rear brake hoses, 2 front suspension arms, track rod ends, inner tie rods, 1 rear coil spring, wheel arch cover is missing, front disc and pads. The reason we're changing this steel arm is because the play in both wheels is quite bad. So not only have we got play in the ball joint in the steel arm, allowing the wheel to maneuver like that, we've also got play in the inner tie rods and track rod end, which is a lot minor compared to that ball joint, but we're going to do it all and get it all as it should be. Wheel arch cover, really common on the Clks and 203s, is just smashed. So basically, you shouldn't be able to get your head up there. That should be all covered up. New cover for that. As we explained, the play in the arm, that shouldn't be there. These suspension arms, we're only replacing this one and that one. They actually don't look that old, but they're not branded, so they've just not lasted, to be honest. So length order, we're fitting length order, which is good quality arms on there. Front disc and pads we are replacing. The discs are absolutely knackered, but the pads are like brand new. Biggest problem is when you're driving down the road and you apply the brake pedal, the pedal's just pulsing really badly, so the discs are actually warped. So we're going to replace them for genuine front disc and pads, proper stuff. Because of the ball joints that are allowing extra play in the wheel, you can see where the tyres are wearing unevenly on both sides. So once that's done, we need to do the tracking on the car, get everything realigned. Moving backwards, changing a prop shaft coupling. You can see there where it's separating. We have got a broken rear spring going along with the brake fluid change. We are changing the rear hoses because they are quite badly cracked. They look like they're leaking, but they're not. It's WD-40. We did originally quote for a new exhaust as well, a genuine exhaust. The customers managed to get it done at a local garage who's supplied and fitted an aftermarket exhaust. It is a steel exhaust, it is going to rot, whereas the genuine one, they just don't rust on this era anyway. I'll show you. So I've just got a simple magnet. Obviously that is steel, it's not magnetic. You can see the quality of that, and that has done in excess of 200,000 miles. But he saved a few quid, you know. That exhaust is probably going to outlive the life of the car, so a few quid saved there. We're all up for that. Right, we're going to start with the suspension. Nathan's going to give us a hand, so he's going to do the opposing side to me. Right, that's the arms out. Quite straightforward, which is nice. If you've got to take the aluminium arms out, I think we've shown in previous videos, you've got to take this roll bar off, which can be a nightmare. Luckily they're okay, but these ones are quite straightforward. I think Nathan thinks this is a race because we're doing a side each. Look at him. I've never seen him work so fast. So I'm trying to tighten the ball joint up, and the ball joint is spinning in the hub. It has an Allen key in the top of the ball joint so you can hold it steady. So now that's nipped in the hub, I can tighten it up, take my Allen key out, and then good to go. That's the inner bush tight. Before anyone loses their minds in the comments, yes, we've tightened that up on a 2-post ramp. It is going on the 4-post ramp to be tracked, and then we'll let that back off, settle the suspension down and tighten it back up. Also, Nathan started well before me and he's still going, and I've finished.
About 2 seconds.
And he's using electric tools.
You have to keep recording me, mate.
I've undone the chatwood end, exposed the inner tie rod, and then I can get the big monkey wrench on, undo it, that's it. I'm going to take this off as one unit and then I can just deal with it on the vise separately. So before I take the nut off the old tie rod, I'm just going to measure how far away from the end of the tie rod it is, put it back on the new tie rod in the same position. It's not going to make the tracking correct, but it'll get us somewhere where the old tracking was, I'll say. Right, so put the boot on, clip on, nut on, roughly where it came off the old one. I'm just going to put loads of grease on the threads for the chatwood end. That's going to make our life a lot easier tracking. And then that is one ready to fit back to the car. Screw my tie rod back in. That's been tightened back up. Put the boot back on, put the clip back on. That's it. So we'll tighten all this up, get the other side done. We're making good progress. So I'm just going to take the remaining of the wheel arch cover out. I don't know why this happens all the time. It must be if you drive through a puddle or something and it pushes it back and touches the wheel and destroys it. I don't know, but it seems to change these a lot. So not much left there, but you can see where it's obviously been burning, touching the wheel. So get the new one fitted, get all that covered up so it all looks proper, and then moving on to discs and pads. So Nathan's doing the front discs and pads. He's just cleaned the carriers up and he's noticed that the boot for the slide pin, so we take these off and grease them to make sure they slide in and out freely, but that boot is split. I'm going to change that. So we've got a new boot to go on. We've already greased the pin. So that is now going to stop any dirt going in and seizing that pin up. Both sliders nice and free. So we're just polishing up the hub. It was excessively rusty, so we have a special tool to grind all the corrosion off and make it as smooth as we can. So then when we fit the new disc, we're ensuring it's as flat as possible. Disc on, carrier on. Mercedes brakes, you get new pad slide clips, whatever you want to call them. And the pads are actually handed, so you have an arrow for the direction of the wheel and also a cutout for the piston. Really important that you fit them the correct way, and you also get new bolts for the back of the caliper. So Nathan's going to finish off the discs and pads on this side. We're going to work at the back of the car. First job we're going to do at the back end is the spring. One spring's broken. Would recommend a pair, but it's just having the one, which is fine. You know, it's we're on a bit of a budget at the same time. We check them every service anyway. Right, so I've had to lower the exhaust down to gain access to this bolt. So I've just put it on a stand. I'm going to take the bolt out. And then we can lower this down nice and slow. Release the tension off the spring. And there you go. One broken spring. So as you can see, it's just the tail that's snapped off. So new spring going in, colour code 2 yellow. All Merc springs have colour codes, different codes for different weights of vehicles, different specs. That's why we use genuine springs, to ensure we're going to get the correct ride height. Aftermarket springs, it's usually one fits all. Last thing you want is a wonky car. That's the spring in. Got to tighten it down. You can see actually, if you look underneath here, you can see in the bottom arm where the tail sits, it sits in there. So you've got to make sure it's in and butted up to a stop. Let's get the exhaust back in place. Not the best fit, this aftermarket exhaust. It's a bit of a stretch to the rubbers. The fitment of this exhaust isn't great. It's really close to the subframe. It's actually, well, it's not touching, but should the exhaust swing, it's going to touch. But there's a good few quid save there. That's it, innit? Just get on with it. Spring's done. Got to put the plastic cover back on. And then we've got rear prop coupling. Nathan's completely finished the front disc and pads now. Brake hoses. You know what I mean? Look how bad they are. Get those swapped out. Fresh brake fluid. Doing well, quite enjoyed this. So we're now moving on to the prop shaft coupling. It's important to take note of the bolts on a prop shaft coupling. Some of the washers are on the prop shaft side and some are on the prop coupling side. It keeps the prop coupling balanced, because if you put all the washers on one side, it'll be wobbling all over the place. And also to take note of front and back. So I'm looking at which way is the writing on the old one and just comparing it to mine, so I don't put it on backwards. If you look here, you'll see what I mean. I've just put some markings on there. You can see that's a bolt and a washer and just a nut on the other side. And then on this one, it's just a bolt with no washer and the nut is on the back. And then when you look down it straight, the prop coupling's perfectly straight. I've seen so many of these, people put the washers behind all the bolts and then the prop coupling's all over the place. So I'm just prying the coupling out of the prop shaft, and you can see how bad that is. So I've got the old one off. So we said writing was at the front, so we know which way to put it up. So before I tighten these up, hopefully what I was trying to explain makes sense. So you can see no washer, washer, no washer, washer, and where there's no washer, there's one on the back. So we can tighten all them down now. Give it a spin, make sure it's straight, and that's it. Did you hear that?
No.
My elbow just creaked. Signs of getting old. Your elbow's creaking when you're tightening nuts up. Obviously we've got to change the brake fluid when we're changing the hoses anyway. I can't remember if during inspection it failed a brake fluid test or not, so here we go and find out. Amber, green, red. Red being replace, amber advise, and green for go. So brake fluid is testing amber, which isn't too bad, but obviously it's getting flushed out anyway. So as we've explained numerous times, brake bleeder connects to the reservoir under the bonnet, 2 bar of pressure, and then that pushes the fluid around, work our way around the car, and then by the end of it we should have, well, we will have a minimum of 1 litre of brake fluid drained out the whole system. Job done. Put the wheels on, torque them up, road test to just let the suspension settle, then tracking. We are just bleeding the front, and we've discovered a quick problem. The bleed screw is blocked, so we've undone the nipple and no fluid is coming through. Right, the nipple, we couldn't get it, well, I just wasn't happy with it, so I just threw it in the bin and I put a brand new bleed screw in. We try and stock quite a few different ones just to cover us in situations like this. These are the things you can come across when you think you're doing a simple job. Something like that can just hold you up. One last corner to do, wheels back on, and we can get on tracking, getting towards the end of the day. We need to get this video finished. tracking machine is all set up. We took measurements of the car. The rear toe is slightly out, nothing major, so we'll get that in. And then obviously the front's going to be miles out because of all the suspension work we've done. We'll get that tracked in.
A few moments later.
We've had to abandon the rears. Both rear towing arms were completely seized. I've spent a good time trying to unseize them now and I can't. Last thing what I do is snap the bolt. So if the customer wants the rear toe aligning perfectly, we're going to have to change the rear toe arms and bolts. And we're going to have to probably cut them out. Anyway, onto the front, which is obviously miles out. Nathan's doing that now. Some final checks, some tests, and we're done. Need to put the under trays back on. Upon removing the under trays, they were bolted on with all sorts of different configurations, nuts and bolts, 10 mils, 8 mils. We are gonna take all that rubbish off and fit it all on properly with genuine screws and clips. That's getting the job done properly, get it down the road. I don't know if you can hear that, but when you shut the door, there's quite a horrible noise. I think I know what that is. Better. Basically, there is a grommet with a 10 mils nut that holds part of the window regulator in place, and it always comes loose on these. Anyway, that's all the work done. Car is now in a mechanically good frame of mind. Was it worth it? Well, let's go through some prices. So originally I quoted for all the work we've done today and an exhaust back box, and it also needed 2 rear tyres, which I forgot to mention. The customer got an aftermarket exhaust done at his local garage, so he saved himself a couple of £100 there. And he went to a tyre shop and got himself some good tyres fitted. The work we've done today is £1,800. The exhaust we quoted for was £650. That was for a genuine Mercedes back box, supplied and fitted. And I'm going to throw the tyres into the price as well, because I did find them on the service, and that is part of what it needed to bring this car back on the road. 2 rear tyres, I've quoted 150 quid each, 300 quid. So that is a total of £2,750. Shall we shave that down to 2,500? Because he's had the aftermarket one done, he must have saved 250 quid. So we'll call it 2.5 grand. Plus the cost of the service, which he had done to find out we needed this work in the first place. He had a B service, which contains of oil and oil filter change, air filter change, and a cabin filter change. The total cost for that was £370. £2,870 for the service and inspection, all the suspension work done today, the back box is had somewhere else, and the 2 rear tyres. Was it worth it? Well, I think so. The guy's owned this car for many years, loves the car. I don't think the engine's going to give out anytime soon, even at this kind of mileage, 230,000 miles. You can probably hear it actually. I think it's worth it. What can you go out and buy for £3,000, let's say, we're just rounding figures up, £3,000 that's just been serviced with a 12-month MOT and a fresh bill of health? Well, there's not much. There's nothing with a Mercedes badge with leather seats, put it that way. I think once these cars get to this age, each service and MOT, it's always like, oh, is it worth it? Do you keep going? I mean, I think if you're maintaining one of these for a couple of grand a year, I think you're doing all right. So I'm going to vote it was worth doing, because let's face it, at this kind of mileage, if you've owned it for years and years, the car literally owes you nothing. So every year is a bonus year. But I think there's some good life left in this car yet. Like I say, it's a really good engine. It's got the old 5-speed gearbox in there. You know, keep servicing that. That's not going to let you down anytime soon either. And I have to say, after all that work, it is driving spot on. no clunks, no bangs, steering's nice and tight. So yeah, why not? Everything seems to work on the car. You know, this engine on the motorway, cruise control on, you could cruise around in this all day. But yeah, just coming up to 230,000 miles. There's something about high mileage cars that make you like, it's like you're rooting for them. You're rooting for the customer to keep going and keep going. But overall, underneath, the condition of the car's pretty good. It's not outstanding, but it's certainly not the worst I've ever seen. Well, especially now we've done all that work. So yeah, I'm quite pleased with it. The customer's pleased. To be honest, that's all that matters. If the customer's happy, I'm happy. So I think that draws the end to this video, to be honest. Make sure you give us a thumbs up, give us a like and a subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.